If you're tuning in, I'm here with Tiffani from Salesforce and so many other worlds of influence and writing. And I'm excited to host her here today just to dig into a bit of her background as well as just hearing her feedback on some questions around disruption and how people can kind of approach the season with some degree of confidence and creativity. And so thanks for wanting to join, Tiffani.
Absolutely. And I'm totally thrilled that we are live.
There you go. Yeah.
It's great. Thanks for having me, Joel.
And definitely. And to bring the viewers kind of up to speed, can you do a little bit of a summary of your background and what you're excited about right now?
Yes. So as Joel mentioned, my name is Tiffani Bova. I am the Growth and Innovation Evangelist at Salesforce. I have the wonderful pleasure of usually traveling around the world and meeting with customers and clients, speaking at events. Last year, I flew 365,000 miles and did 100 keynotes. So I'm normally somewhere in the world. I think today I was supposed to be in Milan or something, but I'm thrilled I'm here with you at LinkedIn Live with Joel. But I get to spend time talking about sort of disruption, innovation, how businesses are moving. But more importantly, like I'm a firm believer that the backbone of corporate growth is personal growth. So having an opportunity to speak about sort of what do I think that looks like going forward is fantastic.
Amazing. And what's been, I guess, before we get into the work side of things, what's been one personal habit or personal trait you've kind of been a fan of that you've developed in your own life during this unique shift?
Well, I'd say this. I'd say, I'm a firm believer that you have to be a student of whatever profession you're in. And so, always pushing yourself to learn something new, have kind of this beginner's mind around different points of view and giving yourself permission and space to try things and fail and try them again. I think that that's really important. And so for me, doubling down on that and staying curious and willing to try things that make me super uncomfortable during this time is really worked out well. I mean, do I miss traveling? I actually miss meeting strangers, right? Like having really random conversations with people who are interesting and have different points of view and bring sort of something new to the table. So I'd say that my love of curiosity and learning is serving me well at this moment.
And with kind of that online shift, are you having to create more kind of barriers in your own life to not be overstimulated by all those new ideas and conversations, or how do you navigate that?
Yeah, people are like, how are you dealing with not being on the road, And I didn't realize because literally I have not been home 30 full days in over 15 years, like to be physically on the ground in my house for 30 straight days. And now I'm well past that. I'm at 80 or 90 at this point. I mean, I was grounded on March 8th. And so I've been here since then. But I'd say I didn't realize how much time and space to think flying and traveling gave me, because I would read while I was flying, or I'd watch TED Talks or listen to a podcast, or I'd, meet people along the way. And so that sort of time I had where the stimulation was all in my head or in whatever I was consuming is very different than this kind of always on. Video tends to be the default choice. Now, when you have a phone call, people are like, well, wait a minute, aren't you going to like put the video on? I'm like, well, I wasn't planning on it, but I can. And so now it's a very different level of fatigue I have, where I'm really tired at the end of the day. And normally this kind of fatigue I'm feeling happens after long stretches of travel. But now I'm feeling it even more so at home.
That's a great point to bring up. Back to that student note you mentioned about just creating space in our own schedules to be more focused on how we can develop ourselves. And with that kind of in mind, what would your advice be to those physical students kind of within high school or university, and they might have their work plans changed? What would be your advice to them as they look to have the most impact as they kind of continue to stretch themselves while working from home, or even just looking for creative projects to pursue?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's been challenging is, many students, college, high school, et cetera, really rely on internships to figure out what's the best way for them to get into the workforce, or what do they want to do. Being an intern and trying something out is a great way to realize what you don't want to do, as well as it is to realize what you want to do. So I would tell you this. It was a conversation I had with a friend of mine, Seth Godin, many years ago. And I was asking him, so if you were to recommend to somebody who wanted to become a marketer, and they're in college or in their early part of their career, and maybe they're not in a marketing role right now, or they're not progressing in their career as much as they had wanted to, what would you advise to them? And his simple piece of advice was go market. And so marketing things like could be, your kids' soccer, or it could be your, Girl Scout trooper, it could be your church, or it could be, a hobby that you like doing, or an association that you're involved in, or a nonprofit you're involved in. How could you help them market? And donate your time to do it, but it's kind of like you're learning, right? I want to send out a newsletter to this community that I'm part of, and I want to write it and send it out, and what platform am I going to use, and what how do I want to send it out, and how do I do that, and what if I wanted to put video in it, or whatever you want to do, but take that chance on learning and offering up help in with companies that you may know, or it could be your family business, whatever it is. And so that little piece of advice of just sort of go out and do whatever it is that you think you want to do, and finding a way to do it at this time. I realize it's remote, but like marketing is that idea, you can do it mostly remote at this point. And so if that's what it is, if it's digital design, if it's creativity, if it's art, if whatever it is that you want to try, making sure that, along with your studies, you're carving time out to go and try those things that you think you might want to do, because accidentally I found my career and I couldn't be more blessed. I love what I get to do every day. It is absolutely a dream job, but I had to find my way here. If I were to ask myself, my 30-year-old, 20-year-old self, what do I think I'd be doing when I grew up? This is not what I thought I'd be doing, so it is just a matter of trusting the process and giving yourself access to try new things. And then you might actually stumble upon something that really ignites your soul. And now the question is, how do you find a way to make money? Doing what ignites your soul. So that's the gift.
And with kind of that approach of, and I love what you mentioned about Seth Godin saying, instead of going to university to validate your skill, why not just basically develop your own skill and start practicing something in your community or in your network? I think from a lot of the questions and conversations I have with students, there's that barrier to kind of just starting things and kind of even having that validation that that project is worth some level of significance. And my question to you, kind of being from a bigger brand like Salesforce and looking to hire people, would you say that if they're still doing their project and they're still learning and developing a skill and they've built a website, is it still a valid project and work experience if it's not under a big brand? Or is there a value to kind of maybe having a sponsor or some kind of internship from a bigger brand kind of behind them?
Yeah, unfortunately, I would answer this differently if we weren't in the middle of a pandemic, right? I mean, I think at the end of the day, the intern programs are so fantastic. As you mentioned, I work at Salesforce, and I mentioned it as well. Our intern project group just kicked off this past week that we're in the middle of, and it's 350 or 400 interns across the company around the globe, and it's a sort of a class of 2020, if you will. Coming in and doing work, but many companies have cut their intern program because a lot of it was in person, and it's hard enough right now to get employees engaged and all of that, to then try to bring someone else in the fold who's not part of the company already, maybe a little bit more difficult. But I would tell you this is, it's just a matter of where can you add value, where can you help, what do you like doing, and how do you create a role for yourself there? And I would tell you that small businesses, nonprofits really need help right now. And so if there's things you're passionate about, donating your time is a great, and the students of today are of the generation where they want to donate time. They're very interested and active in, the environment and human rights and equality and all those things. And I think that's fantastic. And so, if you can try in the nonprofit world, it will be applicable in the for-profit world. And you may realize that that's where you're meant to be, is to stay in nonprofit. So I think whether it's a formal intern program, whether it's a startup, a mid-business, or an enterprise, experience is experience. Whether you're doing it on your own, I think it takes a very unique personality to kind of be your own entrepreneur. And so if that's not your thing, then that's where you need to plug yourself into some place that you can feel that you're part of something larger. Because if you're just looking for that self-motivation and you're not finding it, they're like, I'm not an entrepreneur. And so once I realized that, when I was turning 50, I realized I was not an entrepreneur. Like, if you can figure it out early in your career that that's sort of not your thing, you might be it later, but don't put a lot of pressure on yourself of like, why can't I get something started that I'm really passionate about or that people want to do? And why, my other friends are entrepreneurs. Everyone in my circle, my personal circle of my closest friends, all of them are entrepreneurs. I'm the only one that works for a company. So I've surrounded myself with entrepreneurs, which is great for me because I'm a little bit of an intrapreneur. But I'd say, find where you can do it. And if it's not a formal intern program, then donate your time.
Great points. And I love that you mentioned when you clarified that you were an entrepreneur, that brought you a lot of peace, but that doesn't mean that you can't build a community and have friendships with thinkers that challenge you to be different. So I love that point. I'll just take a quick break to mention, if you are tuning in now, feel free to drop a comment below from where you're watching from, or if you have any questions for Tiffani. We'll keep going on the questions, but if you have anything that you want answered from the incredible kind of background she has, feel free to mention that below. Switching gears a bit now, Tiffani, regarding kind of some topics that I think you've written about, as well as you've spoken on the stage quite a bit. With regards to the topic, you mentioned a lot about the new future. I'm curious, what do you have in terms of advice for business professionals or younger professionals? Where are you seeing kind of the reopening of the world coming into effect, and how can people be prepared?
Yeah, this is a very interesting time for us. Sort of pre-COVID, this was the first time we have 5 generations, and you could kind of call it 5.5 generations almost of people in the workforce. And that is very challenging because you have, sort of digital natives coming in where all they know is, so think a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old that may be getting their first summer job, right? All they've ever known is an iPad or an iPhone in their hand from a very early age. And then you go all the way to somebody who's about ready to retire, who had to learn how to become more digital. And so those are very different work styles. And so my challenge to the current generation, right, that's either in high school or in college and is thinking about what do I want to do and what do I want to be. So a couple pieces of advice I'd give you is there's a very amazing sort of thinker by the name of Clayton Christensen. And he wrote the book, The Innovator's Dilemma, but he's also talked a lot about something called jobs to be done. And that's all about identifying a job that needs to be done. So for example, right, you want to listen to music and you want to listen to music when you're not home. Well, the job to be done was, how do you take music with you, to listen? And it used to be, well, you had a big boom box, right? And then something was invented. This was like the very first iPod. I still have it on my desk because it reminds me that just in so many short years, we've gone from this, right, to all kinds of crazy stuff. And so the job to be done was, how do I put a lot of music on something you can take with you? And so what are the jobs to be done that are now showing themselves in this new reality of working from home, educating from home, healthcare from home, food delivery, the supply chain? Like, there's all these little jobs to be done. Netflix was born out of a job to be done from a company of Blockbuster that was not, taking care of customers the way that they should. A job to be done would be, something like the Four Seasons that was founded out of, Canada. It's like, I want a higher end experience from a hotel perspective, right? And so jobs to be done is the answer to how do you focus and harness some of the ideas that you have. So for this generation, my challenge to you would be, what jobs to be done have been uncovered during this time? And how can you be the tip of the spear that fills that need? Either does it better, does it more cost effective, does it with, it's sort of a different kind of feel? What is it that you can add value to on jobs to be done? And if you start to think about work in that way, businesses do two things. They make stuff and sell stuff. So the stuff that gets made, job to be done, coffee is I need to wake up, a donut, I just want a fast breakfast. Like it's job to be done is I need to get from point A to point B, and I don't want to catch a taxi, or I don't want to drive my own car, or I don't want to catch a train. I'm going to catch an Uber. And now in Vancouver, you can finally catch an Uber. So we have finally gotten Canada. It was like it's like Vancouver, no Uber, and Iceland, no Starbucks. Those two things really threw me. So
there are too many tweets I saw of tech companies or their boards coming to meet in Vancouver, and they just couldn't imagine that they couldn't get an Uber from the airport. It was too funny. But on a follow-up question for that, with the jobs to do mentality, my question for you, I guess, would be, do you think there will be more entrepreneurs coming out of this season, or more kind of just classic employees? Or even a third bucket would be just looking at the gig economy. Will now employees have 2 to 3 different jobs or contracts that they might support different companies with?
Well, so you can even say, like, even if you look at Uber as an example, and, Uber, classic Uber, no one's riding, right? I mean, it's, how are you going to get into someone's car, and is it clean, and like everything just right now, right? So Uber's like, well, they had Uber Eats. So we're going to pivot to Uber Eats because people want delivery and local restaurants need help. And, so it was sort of the job to be done was, well, if I'm having people drive people, why not have them drive food, which was, born Uber Eats. And now Uber Eats and Grubhub are thinking to come together to really sort of help platform and accelerate the usage of it for delivery of food. And so I'd say to you that it's also about this evolution of jobs that have already been defined that will change because of the way we now have to, at least in the short term, socially, engage with brands, but more physically, how do we do that as well? So I think it's kind of two sides to the coin. Is the jobs to be done mentality helps you look for opportunity. And then you don't have to be completely revolutionary. Like, you don't have to come up with something you don't know is there. It could be a small pivot to something. Some of our biggest brands right now that are helping us actually deal with this work from home quarantine were all born out of the financial crisis in the US, when the economy crashed in sort of 7, 8, and 9. And that could be Dropbox, Pinterest, Instagram, all those things came up the last time we had something that was disruptive, not to this scale. And so the thing that's exciting for me is what's going to come out of this one, right? What is going to be the jobs that will be uncovered that could be better now using technology? Like, I'm super excited for teleeducation, telehealth, flexible work hours, school hour, really honing things that have been standard since the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. Like, we've always worked 9 to 5. Well, that's because we've always changed our clocks. That's because, do we still need to do that today when farming isn't? That was the reason we changed the clocks. Farming isn't, agriculture isn't 95% of how the US makes its money. It's not from agriculture. Do we still need to change our clocks? And so maybe we will catch up to things that no longer need to be done because of the advancements that we have in technology.
Wow. Some loaded, amazing answers right there. Thinking kind of back now to, I guess, industries and small businesses that you think might come out of this era. Is there any kind of fun particular niches that you've been keeping your eye on that you think some some innovation is kind of close to skyrocketing?
Well, I think that if nothing else, this generation should be reimagining how to be educated, because, at the end of the day, like, school has stopped. You've got some teachers are teaching class still. Some are doing, some are doing that. There's no consistency. Teachers are having to kind of find their own way. And so, as a student, I was not a great student. I was a sort of C student, average student. I just got by. In college, I don't have my MBA. I graduated with an undergraduate, but I did not go on. I'm a listen visual learner, not a read learner. So, lots of things had shaped it. And so when I think, boy, could I have been educated differently had it been a little bit of video, and not just lectures? If it had been lectures and not so much reading, if the reading was different, if it was an Audible book, or if it was just, instead of doing cliff notes in writing, like, could somebody, do a synopsis of it via video? Like, I just learned differently. And so now you go, well, should we be teaching differently? Because kids, I think humans all learn differently, and so for the visual listen learner, school is not great. Like, I didn't not do well because I'm not smart. I didn't do well because that's not the way I learn. And so I feel like if nothing else, this generation that is in a time where they're being educated, they know what it used to be educated, and now they know this education. They go, well, hold on a second. Like, how do we blend these two worlds to say, do kids really need to be in school from 8 to 3 every day? Because I can't pay attention from 8 to 3 every day, And so should it be 3 days a week? Should it be 4 days a week? Should it be, half day and a half day? Should it be, I don't know. I think, I'm super excited to see where education goes, because I think if we can get more people educated, if we can do, continuing learning, if we can do, reskilling people. And so it's this constant time of education, not, okay, when you're 21 or 22 or 23, whatever age, that you stop educating and then all of a sudden all you do is work. Like, I just think that, being a lifelong learner is important, but I think that that means that we have to be able to give people the ability and platforms to learn how they want to learn.
Yeah, well said. I didn't know that history of you in the classroom, so that kind of makes me think a bit more curiously about this next question I want to ask you, which was, of course, leading into the book. Was completing the book an accomplishment that kind of gave you goosebumps when you think back to your high school teacher saying, Tiffani, she'll never write a book?
Yeah. Mr. Fartog was my...
What grade?
11.
Okay.
So I was a junior in high school.
Yeah.
And my creative writing teacher, he's like, yeah, not so much, right? And then my college counselor said, business isn't really for you. You need to pick another undergraduate degree. Wow. Yeah. So I think that has a lot to do with, I wasn't engaged. I wasn't interested. I wasn't excited about it. It was just not my thing. And I think just because I was not absorbing, because it wasn't the way that I learned. But I would say writing a book is probably not anything I would have imagined I did because I'm a talker. So, I knew the idea in my head. Getting it on paper was really painful for me. Like, it was an awful experience writing the book because it's just not the way I communicate. So I had to find a way to blend those skills. So going back to sort of when you're really uncomfortable, right? And so because I give keynotes, I basically outlined what the book would be, and I gave keynotes for each chapter. I recorded the keynote, transcribed it, and that would be the beginning of my chapter. And so I could begin. But if I looked at that flashing little, icon on the screen of like, okay, go write literally 75,000 words, go, I was like, that thing flashed at me for like a week. And I think I got, this book is about, that's as far as I got, Yeah. So it was cathartic. It was, all kinds of things. But I had put together a vision board of what I wanted to have happen as it related to the book, like who I wanted my publisher to be, my agent, my publicist, who I wanted to endorse the book. Like I really sort of in my mind's eye tried to visualize what it would be. And I was, I'm grateful and blessed that everything on that vision board happened.
Wow.
I wrote the book, got the deal. It became a Wall Street Journal bestseller. People really like it because I actually wrote the book I would want to read. It's 30 short stories. There's, sketch notes in it because I like to visually learn. So I tried to satisfy not writing a book that was always hard for me to consume, that I tried to do 30 short stories so people could read a story, put it down, pick it up, and keep going, and put it down and pick it up. Because me sitting and reading a 350-page book like in a sitting was never going to happen. So, I think that never say never. That's the first thing I'd say. The second is, just because your teachers tell you can't do something doesn't mean you can't do it. And third, the talk track in my head was I'm not a writer. And that didn't help either. Right. So I needed to, release that feeling that I was not a writer, that my teachers told me you're not a writer. Ultimately, apparently I can sort of tell a story. And so I had to figure out, how do I tell a story and write?
And have you sent a copy of the book to those teachers yet?
No, well, what's funny is my high school is great. I was born and raised in Hawaii, as I said. And so I went to a high school that is fairly prestigious, if you will. It's a private school, but prestigious because of who we've graduated. We've graduated the founder of AOL, Steve Case. So in my class, he was older than me. In my class was the founder of eBay. So Pierre Odemeyer. So now we have Odemeyer Kindergarten at our school, and then we have Case Middle School that Steve built from AOL and his brother. And then we have a guy by the name of Barack Obama, who also graduated from the school. So it's prestigious because of who's sort of graduated. But what's also really great about it is the fact that they're really good at pushing the high school class, if you will, and now all through all the grades, but to really explore what they may be good at. And so they bring people like me back in to do lunch and learns. And so we'll dial in and do it. And long before this happened, where it's like, it's a career day and what do you want to be? And then if you want to be this career or this career, they'd put together 10 or 15 of us over the course of a day or two. And the students could, show up to that particular talk track. So, I want to be a doctor or a dentist or a lawyer, or want to get into sales or marketing or customer service. And they could hear from us, hey, listen, like I went to school there, like I'm from Hawaii. I get it. I know what you're feeling and thinking. And, if I can impart any wisdom on you, I will. And so what's been really great is doing things like this, Joel, where I like to say, poison the minds of the next generation. Show up and go, I don't have my MBA. I wasn't a great student, and I've got a Wall Street Journal best-selling book, and people are interested in what I have to say. So you just kind of never know where the journey will take you.
I love that. And I think that educational model you mentioned at the high school, that's so powerful and in some ways so easy, right? To create this community where you're bringing other graduates back in to have conversations with students that have real-time questions. And I think I'm inspired by the way that hopefully technology can inspire what's going on right now, and more of these Zoom calls or interviews or LinkedIn Lives can happen so that we're giving more resources to people that really need it at the younger years. So that's awesome. And I can't imagine the high school reunion conversations you'd have with Barack Obama, the founder of AOL, and the founder of eBay. That's pretty remarkable. Last question on the book that I've heard mentioned from a couple authors is their goal for writing the book is sometimes different from how their readers interpret their message and how it transforms actually how they live and work. And so my question for you is, what was kind of the 1-2 sentence goal of the book? And then on the flip side, was there any neat stories that came out of your readers' feedback that actually shifted how they interpreted the book and what they learned from it?
Yeah, I'd say this. I'd say this is how it happened. And so I'll take it on a quick little journey is, why would I ever want to write a book? I'm not a good writer. I'm not a writer. Like, that whole self-talk, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I end up at a company called Gartner, which is the world's largest analyst and consulting firm. And I was a research fellow, which meant I had to write research, which, why would I pick a job where I have to write? I don't write well. I don't like to write. Like, oh my God, what was I thinking? However, what it taught me was how to take all of these data points, because I would have conversations and calls with clients every single day. So I'd probably have 500 or so calls a year. And over 10 years, I had about 5,000 calls with customers. And so it would be someone who was the head of sales or marketing or customer service for tech companies, startups, all the way to the largest in the world. And my conversation with them was they would call and say, how do I sell more? How do I launch a product? How do I start selling through, third parties? How do I market better? It was all about growth, sales, and marketing, if you will. And I found myself learning from those and finding patterns. And then I started, learning how to get those thoughts onto paper, except in a very academic way. I don't tell stories that way. So I had to, figure out how to do that. But here's sort of the point I wanted to make is I didn't know I needed to write a book. Everyone else told me I needed to write a book. Like, you need to write a book. This is good stuff. Like, and I want other people to hear it. And unless they're on the phone with you or unless they see you on stage, they're not able to get your content. And so you need to write a book. And the first time I heard it, it was like, oh my God, I can't write a book because I don't write, right? And I'm not, that's not the way finally, by like the 8th or 9th time, it was Seth Godin who literally pulled me aside and said, you need to write this book. And I was like, okay, if people tell you something, enough times, you no longer can go, it's no longer a whisper in your head, right? It's they're yelling in your ear that you need to do it. And so that's how it began. And so when I said, okay, now what do I want to write about? I think that this is where it gets even more difficult. Was I wanted to try to put something that was timeless. I read 75 of the best business books ever written. And I said, what have they said? What didn't they say? How did they say it? What did I like? What didn't I like? What helped me? What didn't help me? How do I synthesize everything over the 5,000 calls and the 400 keynotes and the 3 million flying miles and all the things I've done? How do I put that into 300 pages? And so it's kind of like everybody who had been on this journey with me helped me focus on what I needed to write about. And so that's why I think it resonated so well, was I really listened to what people liked about what I said and what I was doing and what I was covering and what I was thinking and the way I sort of approached things. And more importantly, many liked the fact that the kind of book I wrote got them much more stimulated, and so many more of them finished the book, where most books you get to page 40 or so in nonfiction and you don't finish the book. Yeah. And so many people have actually finished it because I wrote it in a way I was hoping I would get them engaged and hooked, that they would come back and come back and come back and come back. So, knock on wood, I think the ideas that were given to me, I did them justice by putting it on paper.
Thanks for sharing about that whole process. That seems like, I think an incredible way for you to personalize that book process. So that's quite the accomplishment.
Yeah. And I would say that if you're listening along your life, during different parts of your like in my 20s, it was all about, I didn't know what I wanted to do. In my 30s, it was all about how much money can I make and how much can I move up the ranks. In my 40s, I was burnt out. I was like, I needed a break. I need to try something new. And I started being a researcher, an advisor. And I had to learn how to do that because I'd been a seller and a marketer and an executive, and I'd never been on the academic side. Remember, I wasn't academic at all. So I had to learn how to be an academic. And that was my 40s. And when I hit my 50s, I was like, how can I give back? Like doing things like this, like how can I give back to a community and an industry that's been so good to me? And so I will tell you, through my 20s and 30s and 40s, that there were all those little whispers of people saying, listen, Tiffani, you're a great storyteller, or you do such a good job of distilling complex thinking into something really, and I was not really paying attention. And then after you hear it 3, 4, 5 times, now when I was younger, it was like, oh, you talk too much. You're a little loud, right? You're kind of bossy, like whatever it might be. And then they were parents of my friends. And now you look back and go, yeah, but all those things have really served me well, right? So, you got to listen, take that as noise. But the other half of it is listen for those whispers where someone sees something in you that you maybe don't see in yourself. And then take those whispers. And if you keep hearing it over and over, that I like to say it gets louder and it gets louder and it gets louder. And then at some point you can't ignore it. Like you really should be a singer, or you should be a dancer, or you should be a writer, or you should be a doctor, a dentist, or whatever it is. Listen to those whispers. Trust the process that it might not happen overnight. And it may be the second or third career that you have throughout time that might be interrupted because of kids, marriage, whatever it might be. But ultimately listen for those whispers and maybe keep track of them because you may look back and go, funny, all those whispers I remembered, I hadn't thought about, or all the times people said I wasn't going to be very good at something. And then lo and behold, here I am. So I'd say listen for the whispers. That and trust the process are the two greatest pieces of advice I give whenever I talk in front of, college students or people who are early in their career.
Amazing advice. I heard something similar from the COO at Shopify, Harley Finkelstein, and he recommends just take a step forward and do something about it. And I think that's exactly what you're getting at, is listen to whispers, make sure that you're documenting, how many times people are telling you to do something. And if your community's behind you, that's kind of half the battle. So I love that advice.
And you just can't stress out. It's not going to happen quickly. I mean, no band is an overnight success. No actor all of a sudden is an overnight success. Like they've been honing their craft and working on their craft and practicing when no one was listening and they were terrible and people booed them and they had to get off the stage. And you just got to be committed to whatever it is that you're doing. And, surround yourself with people who are going to lift you up no matter what. And also tell you the truth when you need to hear it, even when you don't want to hear it. But I would say, trust the process. And you can't speed up times. One thing we cannot do, we cannot speed it up and we cannot slow it down. So you just have to say, look, it may not happen for me in my 20s, but all these little things that I'm doing right now will set me up for better success in my 30s. And then once again, it will, and trust me when I tell you, each decade, your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, haven't gotten to the next one yet, but those decades are very different. They're very different. Like as a human, you feel different. And so you will look back and probably say, oh, now I know why my parents were telling me this and I didn't understand. And now, sure enough, I get it. Right. Yeah. And so it's just a trust the process.
Back on that social listening kind of point you went off on, I want to circle back to that and ask, when you hear those whispers, is it you've just finished a coffee meeting kind of pre-COVID-19, and they say, hey, Tiffani, have you ever considered XYZ? Or is it more so, because I know you're quite prominent on social media, is it more so just keeping a tab on social media messages or comments? Is it a mix, or is it kind of one of those sides?
Yeah, when I say the whispers, I literally mean it's somebody, right? Yeah. But the whispers can also then be validated by what you're hearing externally. You know what I mean? Like you've got this idea, you're sort of mulling it over, and then all of a sudden you hear someone say, oh, this is a job that needs to be fixed. And you're like, I've been thinking about that. So that's that kind of serendipity that, hey, I was thinking about it and I just heard it. Or that was my idea and someone finally did it. And then you're like, okay, the next time I have a really good idea, I just need to do it. Otherwise, someone's going to do it first if you're an entrepreneur. But I'd say it's really in your circle or people who say things to you. I would say it's really more about how people view you versus how you view yourself, and what people think your strengths are versus what you think your strengths are. like I didn't call myself a thought leader. Someone called me a thought leader and I said, okay, what I think is interesting, but calling yourself that is I don't think that that's right. So you kind of have to wait until the external world catches up with what you hope is happening in your head.
Mhm.
So I like the whispers from humans validated by what you're hearing on social media. If you're looking for stimulation, if you're looking for learning and curiosity, then I feel like you have to consume externally, because if it's only in your group, unfortunately, sometimes that becomes groupthink, right? You all think alike, you talk alike, you are alike, right? And so, you want to have different opinions as well as different thinking styles, extroverts, introverts. That's why when I say my closest circle are all entrepreneurs, it allows me to be, vicariously an entrepreneur. And then they hit me up for advice on what should they be doing. And so I'm always hearing from entrepreneurs of what they're struggling with. And then I also get to test advice as well. But it's also a way for me to, like I said, live vicariously through them.
No, that's I think, great point to keep in mind of, I think, in sometimes what's becoming, I think, an over social media focused, stimulized kind of feed that we live in, letting our kind of human connection validate us first and give us feedback before kind of waiting for the online world to validate us. And I think that'll be a piece of feedback I take back for myself, but then also for friends in my own community. So that's awesome. I don't want to take too much more of your time, but maybe just a couple more questions regarding Salesforce and what you're excited about, regarding the amazing work that they're stepping up as a company, and you guys are kind of with what's going on. Is there any final thoughts kind of around what you're excited about that the company is doing right now, and then maybe where you see kind of your next 6 months focused in the role that you have?
Yeah. So, I like I said, this is absolutely a dream job. And one of the reasons that I chose to work at Salesforce when they offered me the job was the Dreamforce event that we have every year that's gone on forever. I had attended 9 or 10 of them when I was not an employee. And it was the only time I'd left a big event that I felt like I wanted to be a better human being when I left it. It was not about the technology. And so I knew when I joined Salesforce, it was going to be a special place to work. And in the middle of this pandemic, we've got a CEO who's been very vocal and loud on what we need to be doing as a company, but more importantly, trying to influence other CEOs and businesses, as well as world leaders, on sort of what to do. And so as a company, we've donated 60 million PPE equipment around the world for hospitals and frontline responders. We've worked very tirelessly and hard on launching a set of products underneath our work.com on how to help get companies back to work on contact tracing and flex work hours and what we need to do from a communication standpoint, et cetera. And so it's not just about the technology we had, it's about rapidly developing and deploying technology that can help people get back to work safely and securely, that now, cities and states and other companies are adopting. So that's really special. And then, just overall making sure that we keep up the one of our core values, which is that giving back. And so we continue to do volunteer hours. So we've got stuff online that I highly recommend to everybody. We have something called Leading Through Change, which we had one this morning where we had the CEO of Accenture on. We've done things with Jennifer Hudson. We've done things with will.i.am. We've done things with, Metallica. We've done things with all kinds. Chrissy Hines has played live. It's just been great. So Leading Through Change is something we do once a week. And then we do something called Be Well. And that's open to everybody. All this is open to everybody. And Be Well is once a day or twice a day, where we've got somebody that comes on and talks about, meditation or burnout or working through, family issues at home, or what to do to, how to keep your kids occupied, or what to do about education. And so that's all free resources that we're putting out. And this morning when I was on our Leading Through Change with our CEO and the CEO of Accenture, there's like 85,000 people watching the stream live. It's just crazy. We've had millions watch others over time. So we're just trying to put out content to help everybody It used to just be reserved for us as employees, and then the executive team said, let's open it up to everyone. And so I would highly recommend those. But that's what I'm most excited about, just sort of seeing all the things we've now learned, how we've come together as communities and countries and societies as human beings to just be better to our planet, to each other, and to the places that we work.
Thanks for sharing that. There was a lot of new information I hadn't heard of, and I think I'll definitely be checking out those resources. So thanks for sharing the good news you guys are doing. Maybe just one last fun question to wrap things up before you get on with kind of the rest of your day. Thinking back to the keynote stage that you're missing and the audience that you love to connect with, if you were at a commencement ceremony kind of for students graduating, what would be the last 30 seconds of your speech to kind of encourage them to navigate this season with uncertainty? And we can maybe finish with that answer.
I'd almost replicate what I'd say, that whatever you think it's going to be, it will be very different than that. And to trust the process, that, surround yourself with the people that will lift you up when you need it, that will help you when you need it, and make sure you give as much as you get. Those would be the things I would say. Awesome.
Well, thanks again for wanting to connect for this LinkedIn Live. It was such a pleasure to have you. And I love the ranges of the jokes and the humor and the fun kind of lightness of your personality, but then also getting to the meat of the matter of talking about things that are important, and just mention the ways that you've grown as kind of a professional, as well as the ways that Salesforce is stepping up. So thanks again for your time. Is there any way people can kind of follow or connect with you? I know you have a podcast, you're active on social media. Is there anything else they should know of?
No, I'd say, please go out, buy the book. I'd love to hear feedback on it. It's called Growth IQ. It's now in 7 languages. It's around the globe. So it's also in Canada and the US. And then I've got my podcast, What's Next, with Tiffani Bova, up on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Spotify. I'm super active on social. For LinkedIn, please follow me. I try to put out a balance of, soft stuff, hard stuff, think stuff, laugh stuff, cry stuff, right? You just sort of mix it up a little bit. But I'd love to hear back from you, if you've got any feedback on what I've said or what really resonated. And I also like to hear when you don't agree with something, because listen, I'm out here learning every day too. And so if there's things I could say better or different, I want to hear that too.
Wow. Thank you for welcoming the stage, and thanks again for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Joel. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us on LinkedIn Live.
We'll see ya.